Tonight, Louisiana knockdown. The Supreme Court strikes down a Louisiana law restricting abortions. And
this is totally outrageous.
Explosive new allegations over Russian bounties for the heads of American troops in Afghanistan. Plus,
white power! There you go!
The President of the United States hits retweet and then deletes a video with a man shouting white power.
The entire thing was offensive.
And as the world death toll from the coronavirus pandemic hits 500,000, the Vice President offers this advice.
Wearing a mask is just a good idea.
As states coast to coast reclose amid new surges of COVID-19. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The High Court hands down a highly awaited decision on abortion today. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Jenna Browder has the night off. Well, in a 5-4 ruling, the justices struck down a Louisiana law that regulated abortion doctors, and with that decision, delivered a major blow to the pro-life movement. CBN News senior Washington correspondent Paul Strand has the latest from the Supreme Court.
It's the first big abortion case of the Trump era, and a big disappointment for the pro-life movement.
The Supreme Court has decided to strike down a law that protects the safety of women and protects children from the tragedy of abortion.
The Louisiana law requires abortion doctors to have admitting privileges at nearby hospitals. It's similar to a Texas law that the court struck down 4 years ago. The court's liberals called the law a substantial obstacle to women seeking an abortion, saying it offered no significant health-related benefits and imposes an undue burden on women's constitutional right to choose to have an abortion. Chief Justice Roberts, the swing vote, cited precedent, describing the result as controlled by the court's decision 4 years ago, invalidating a nearly identical Texas law. But Regent Law Professor Brad Jacob notes, in the Texas case, Roberts dissented and upheld the law.
He said in that case, this is wrong. The Constitution does not require us to strike down a law requiring admitting privileges in a hospital. But today, he said, even though I still think that opinion is wrong, I'm going to follow it. And so he followed the precedent that he himself says is wrong.
The dissenting justices argued that the law does provide health and safety benefits. Louisiana lawmakers say it's why they wrote the law. In response to Philadelphia abortion doctor Kermit Gosnell, convicted of manslaughter involving a patient who died in his care, while operating what investigators called a house of horrors.
We introduced this legislation in 2014 to close the loophole that allows abortion facilities to operate at a lower standard of care.
It's tragic because we have this largely unregulated field where women are getting injured, women are getting killed.
Justice Clarence Thomas gave the strongest dissent, however, attacking Roe v. Wade and declaring abortion precedents are grievously wrong and should be overruled. What this decision shows us is that the conservative majority that court watchers now thought held sway in the court may not be real. Chief Justice Roberts was thought to be a pretty firm conservative vote, but he has sided repeatedly with the 4 more liberal justices. When he does it on an issue as precious to conservatives as abortion, it means probably every issue is up in the air. Paul Strand, CBN News, the Supreme Court.
All right, thank you, Paul. Joining us now for reaction is Mallory Quigley, Vice President of Communications with the Susan B. Anthony List. Mallory, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Mallory, this was a much anticipated case. Were you surprised by today's ruling, and just how much of a setback is it for the pro-life movement?
Well, you know, what we have today is a very bitterly disappointing decision, especially on the part of the Chief Justice for his flip-flop. You know, deciding to choose precedent over the Constitution. You know, think back to Plessy versus Ferguson, the Dred Scott case, Korematsu. I mean, there are plenty of decisions where the court had to overturn bad precedent. And to see the Chief Justice abdicate that and flip-flop on his 2016 dissent in the Texas ruling is really upsetting. But this hasn't really set the movement back. Unfortunately, it is keeping us at the status quo. The abortion lobby for decades has been able to run to the court. That's been their backstop. We don't advance any further from this point, but we haven't taken any steps back. And we know that now that the president's 2 appointed justices, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, they came down on the right side and that they're going to stand with pro-lifers. So that is encouraging.
Mallory, you were just talking about Chief Justice John Roberts. He sided with the court's liberal wing to block the Louisiana abortion law, but he wrote in his opinion citing precedent, which you just called a flip-flop. Do you think he left a loophole for future pro-life cases down the line? I
think that we need courageous justices who are not going to be persuaded by the politics of what's going on outside. I think court watchers, have been watching justice, the Chief Justice, like Paul put together in his package that just played. The confirmation process, the circus surrounding Justice Brett Kavanaugh put abortion front and center, with the abortion rights lobby saying that this, as soon as the court had the opportunity, that they were going to overturn Roe versus Wade. That was their hysteria. That was their hysterical spin. But those of us in the pro-life movement, people who have been sort of paying attention to the court for a long time, I think we've always known that we were going to need a larger margin on the court in order to see meaningful change to the abortion jurisprudence. So,
Mallory,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, real quickly here, we have about 30 seconds left. What does this mean for the future of Roe v. Wade?
Yes, well, this means that it underscores the importance of the upcoming election. We need another pro-life vote on the Supreme Court. Chief Justice Roberts is not going to be that person. If he can't stand up with his own opinion from 2016, he's not going to vote with us on future decisions. So we need another pro-life justice.
All right, Mallory Quigley with the Susan B. Anthony list, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, John.
Well, tonight, for a town that's more divided than ever, there's growing bipartisan fallout over a disturbing report that Russian operatives were targeting American troops in Afghanistan. Even more shocking, the president says he knew nothing about the threat. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips has more. Eric?
Yeah, well, John, now that this bombshell has dropped, Congress is demanding more information about the details. This, as the White House just today indicated that the president has yet to be briefed on the intel. Now, Friday's New York Times reported that Russian intelligence officers secretly offered to pay the Taliban to kill American troops. That offer allegedly was made while the United States and Taliban forces were negotiating peace talks to end America's longest war. The report also says the president was made aware of the threats months ago. The president denied that, tweeting, "Intel just reported to me that they did not find this info credible and therefore did not report it to me or the vice president." Possibly another fabricated Russian hoax, maybe by the fake news New York Times, wanting to make Republicans look bad. But the allegations were serious enough for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to have dashed off a letter to top intelligence officials requesting that Congress be immediately updated on these threats. Now, 23 U.S. troops have died in Afghanistan over the last year, but it's unclear whether they were targeted by those working for the Russians. The White House and Democrats are sounding off about this threat and how credible it is.
There is no consensus within the intelligence community on these allegations, and in effect, there are dissenting opinions from some in the intelligence community with regards to the veracity of what's being reported, and the veracity of the underlying allegations continue to be evaluated.
Just never gotten over the humiliation they suffered in Afghanistan, and now they're taking it out on us, our troops. This is totally outrageous. You would think that the minute the president heard of it, he would want to know more instead of denying that he knew anything.
Now, the White House today denying that the president is soft on Russia, as has been the allegation since we've heard of these possible threats. The White House saying that the president has been very tough on Russia during his presidency. No surprise, though, we're hearing from Russia, and they are claiming that the report is, in fact, nonsense. Now, I should mention that there is one more bit of bad news coming out of the Middle East for President Trump, and that is that Iran has sent out an arrest warrant for the president based on murder and terrorism charges. Now, this stems back to the January drone strike that killed the Iranian general Qasem Soleimani. It's not expected that that warrant is going to really have much teeth to it, but it does point to the fact that there is ratcheting up in the tensions between the U.S. and Iran. John.
All right, Eric, and we know you're going to stay on top of all of that for us. CBN's Eric Phillips, thank you so much. Well, President Trump is under fire over Twitter again after a weekend retweet of a video showing a Trump supporter at a Florida retirement community clashing with anti-Trump protesters and shouting, "White power." The president scrubbed the tweet from his timeline, but that didn't stop a barrage of bipartisan rebukes. CBN's Abigail Robertson joins us now for more on this story. Abigail?
That's right, John. The White House says the president retweeted the video to thank the community for its support and claims that he did not hear the white power chant, which came 8 seconds into the video.
White power! Yes, there you go.
On Sunday morning, Republican Senator Tim Scott quickly called for the tweet to be removed.
I think it's indefensible. We should take it down.
About an hour later, Trump did just that, without an apology or denouncing the video's message. On Monday, White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany offered this explanation.
No, he did not hear that particular phrase.
Former Vice President Joe Biden criticized the president with his own tweet, saying white supremacy should be rooted out and relegated to the pages of history, not promoted by the President of the United States. Also, over the weekend in Mississippi, the long-fought battle to remove the last Confederate symbol remaining on a state flag was finally won in both the House and Senate, celebrated by members on both sides of the aisle.
I voted 37-14, the bill passes.
Mississippi's Republican Governor Tate Reeves says he will sign the bill as soon as it gets to him, and voters in Mississippi will get to approve a new flag in November that must include the phrase, "In God We Trust." Back to you, John.
All right, CBN's Abigail Robertson. Thank you, Abby. Well, here with us now is Justin Gibney, an attorney and political strategist. He's also the co-founder of the AND campaign. Justin, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Republicans and Democrats, white and black, came together yesterday to celebrate the removal of the Confederate battle emblem from the Magnolia state flag. Your reaction when you learned about that?
I think it's long overdue, but I was excited to see it happen. A good friend of mine, Dr. C.J. Rhodes, who is a pastor in Mississippi, worked very hard on that. And it was just time to get rid of a symbol that made a lot of African Americans especially feel a certain kind of way, because the Confederacy obviously wasn't something that was supportive of us and our humanity. And so it was good to see that finally come off the flag.
Now, Justin, the president retweeted and then deleted that controversial video with a man shouting "white power." This after nearly 2 months of racial unrest following the killing of George Floyd. There's reporting out there that suggests the president is trying to fan the culture war and drive a wedge in the nation's divide as part of his re-election strategy. Why not just take him at his word, saying that he did not hear the white power shout?
Well, even if you take someone at their word, the fact that that even went up, the fact that there wasn't a process to make sure that the president of the United States wasn't putting something into social media out into the world that represented that is unfortunate. And so even if you take someone at their word that maybe they didn't understand it, as the president, as the most powerful man in the United States, that's not something that should just happen. And I think they need to change the process by which those tweets go out, at least.
Justin, turning to Minneapolis, the 4 officers there in that city involved in the killing of George Floyd were charged today. Now a judge in Minnesota is saying the trial could be moved out of Minneapolis. This fallout from this is far from over, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, this is going to go on for a while, and I think it's going to go on until nationally until you see very serious policy change. And so a lot of that's going to come on local levels, not just in Minneapolis, but in many other places. But we also need Congress to come together and get a bipartisan bill done. I know there was a bill in the House and a bill in the Senate, and both sides are saying they're not going to work, they're not going to sign the other or pass the other House's bill. But they need to do something. And this is very important that Congress do their job now and come up with a bipartisan bill that brings some change.
Justin, we only have about half a minute left. In the wake of the protests tearing down Confederate statues and monuments across the country, the president signed an executive order on Friday solidifying existing law against such acts. What is the effect of his executive order?
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, a lot of this stuff, this is a federalism question, and a lot of this stuff he may not be able to control, especially when it's state property or local property. So some of that may just be a signal to the base. But I think a lot of people, when it comes to these federal Confederate statues in public places, on public property that the public is supporting and paying for through their tax dollars, a lot of people believe those need to come down. All right, Justin Gibney with the AND campaign, thank you so much for being with us today. All right, thanks for having me. Well, coming up, states reclosing amid a surge in COVID-19 cases across the country and as the global death toll hits 500,000. That and more when Faith Nation returns.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Welcome back. State leaders are trying to turn the tide of a rising surge of coronavirus cases. This as the global death toll has now crossed 500,000. Dale Hurd has the story.
With the number of new cases of COVID-19 still high, almost 39,000 reported Sunday, at least a dozen cities and states have decided to roll back their reopenings. Florida has banned bars from serving customers, and Broward County and Miami-Dade have closed beaches ahead of the Independence Day festivities.
We burned through 90% of our savings during the first shutdown, keeping this place alive. And it's just, at what point will this end?
Masks are now mandatory in Pensacola. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis blames the continued spread on the social activities of young people.
You're seeing it in those groups who are less at risk, but you're seeing them test positive at much higher rates.
California, in a reversal, is shutting down bars in Los Angeles and several other counties, just 1 week after LA bars had reopened from the lockdown.
We're seeing more younger patients who are getting admitted to the hospital. People are not wearing masks as much as they were before.
Mr. Vice President, welcome to First Baptist Dallas.
In Texas, which is seeing more than 5,000 new cases a day, Vice President Mike Pence wore a mask part of the time at Robert Jeffress's 14,000-member First Baptist Church, and at another event encouraged a crowd of over 2,000 to do the same.
Wearing a mask is just a good idea. And it will, we know from experience, will slow the spread of the coronavirus.
Many of the new cases in Texas are reported to be people who attended protests against the death of George Floyd. Cases have also gone up in Nevada less than a month after Las Vegas casinos opened. Appearing on Meet the Press, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar said the death rate and hospitalization rates were the lowest in 2 months. but also called this a very serious situation and said Americans had to take action to slow the spread of the disease.
The window is closing. We have to act, and people as individuals have to act responsibly. We need to social distance. We need to wear our face coverings.
Dale Hurd, CBN News.
First responders and police suffering from post-traumatic stress, alcoholism, divorce, and suicide. When we come back, we'll show you how one group is stepping in to help.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
In ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Well, welcome back. First responders, of course, have a difficult job, but admitting that they need help for psychological and emotional stress is not at all an easy task. Often the deepest wounds come from emotional injuries that can be far more damaging than physical trauma. Police across the country are suffering from PTSD, alcoholism, divorce, and suicide. And now one group is helping police firefighters, paramedics, and emergency medical personnel receive free and confidential psychological help and counseling for trauma for those serving on the front lines. Well, joining me now is Sergeant Mike McGrew, a former police officer and co-founder of 911 at Ease International, which provides emotional support to law enforcement and the first responder community. Mike, welcome to Faith Nation. Real quickly, police officers, when I grew up, were portrayed as the good guys. Today, some see cops as the bad guys in light of videos like the one that captured George Floyd's death. How is that playing into the psychological well-being of police officers that you're talking to?
Well, the media that's happening right now nationwide is something that weighs heavy on all police officers. Nobody wants to see the scene that happened in Minneapolis. There's tens of thousands of great acts and heroic acts that first responders do every day. So to go out there and do a tough job and still have that kind of pressure on you, that's bringing a lot more issues to the first responders that are out there, especially the police officers.
Mike, have you seen a spike in first responders experiencing PTSD and other psychological dramas?
Yeah, over 30 years that I worked in the profession, there was a culture not to address it. There was a stigma that you were weak, you couldn't handle it. And what we've done with this organization is that we've been removing the barriers to allow people to go get the help and make a phone call that isn't connected with their department or with the city or county that they work for. And people trust it. And so the first responders are able to reach out, talk to somebody that gets them lined up with a counselor free of charge, and they're able to get the help that they need. It's changing the culture. It's changing the conversation. Post-traumatic stress it's an injury, so there's nothing wrong with somebody going through the effects of an injury and getting help for it as well.
Mike, it's an important conversation to have. Real quickly, we only have a little less than a minute left. Can you talk about the results you see when your group steps in and helps the police and medical professionals on the front lines?
We have just a lot of testimonies about how this program has saved lives. People that were suicidal were able to go back and be resilient again. People who had marriages on the rocks, they've received help that they're just so grateful for. So what we do is offer a place for people, first responders, to come and just get that resiliency so that they can stay strong to serve their communities even better. And it's just been a great formula. It's working very well. The community supports it. And
Mike, we appreciate your time. We're out of time here, but thank you for the work that you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Well, coming up, a child computer genius moves one step closer to becoming a patron saint of the internet.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
And finally tonight, the Catholic Church rarely recognizes child saints, but the Vatican may be well on its way to naming one Italian teen the first millennial saint. Before 15-year-old Carlo Acutis died from leukemia, he programmed his computer to catalog miracles. While Acutis has not yet achieved sainthood, he's well on his way after being credited in the healing of a boy with a rare illness. A ceremony honoring the next step towards sainthood will be held in October in the Italian city of Assisi, where he is buried. Pretty neat honor. Well, thanks so much for watching Faith Nation. We'll see you again right here tomorrow.